Well, hello there, everyone. This is Mazske Finance coming to you live from Florida. It is Monday, January 3rd, and once again, welcome to 2022. And I'd like to introduce a very special guest for another interview. So we have helicopter pilot Caleb here joining us. So say hello, Caleb.
Hello, Mark. Hello, everybody. Thanks so much for having me on. It's going to be awesome. Also coming to you from Florida, not San Fran, in case anyone was wondering, from the warm 70-degree Miami on this fine December day. Or no, January.
Yes, it is January. And I was just earlier today in touch with my sister who recently moved to pretty close to the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia. And it is snowing there. And she says they're calling for anywhere from 5 to 10 inches of snow. So I'm glad I'm down here in South Florida.
Like the Florida winters, the heat and humidity in the summer. I don't know if it's for me forever, but I can't complain when it's 70 degrees in January.
I agree. And I spent this summer here, and humidity really doesn't bother me. You know, I spent 6 years in the country of Panama and Puerto Rico when I was approximately your age, or maybe a little bit younger. So I'm fine with the heat and humidity, but the winters here are fantastic. So, all righty. Well, we'll get started here, Caleb. Let me flip my sheet back here. So first of all, for those, I know you and I know all about you, but for my audience that doesn't know about you, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about who you are and whatever you want to tell us.
So I'm Caleb. Currently live in Miami, Florida, and fly helicopters in the Coast Guard. I've been doing that for, I think, about coming up on 2 years. Before that, I was in various phases of flight training in college and all that stuff. I met Mark probably, I would say, about 6 or 7 years ago, 2015-ish. Was friends with his sons, and we were running cross country and track together at the time. So he, I think, officially is one of the first people to talk to me about stock investing from a position of someone who has actually been doing it and not like 20-year-old kids telling me how to do it. Back before I had a single dollar to invest. And then again, periodically, every time we would bump into each other over the years. Eventually I did start investing in stocks, mutual funds, 401k, TSP, that kind of stuff, Roth IRA. Spent some time doing that. And then eventually around a year and a half ago, started buying rental properties. Also with Mazske helping me out with that. So that's kind of what I've been up to. Besides flying and investing, I just got a dog a few months ago. His name's Tater. He's a mini golden doodle. So that's kind of been my entire life lately.
So, all right, that sounds good. Well, one question, and I don't think I know this answer, but what really got you interested in real estate? I know I spoke to you about rental property. I know you have some family members that are into rental properties, and I have no idea if others talk to you about it as well, but what do you think really spurred that spark in you to get interested in buying rental property?
I would say the very beginning was spring break of my senior year of college. I had just like the day before spring break, we had what's called Bill at Night at the Coast Guard Academy, where you find out basically what your first job is going to be for the next few years upon graduation. So this was in March of 2017. I had just found out I was going to go to flight school. So like my family, we were celebrating and everything. And we decided to take a spontaneous trip to Pensacola, Florida, from where my parents lived in Georgia. So we drove down, and I visited a few different friends who had been a year or two ahead of me in school, and they were down there looking for places to live, like as a roommate, to move in with, a house of other students. And then my dad, while we were there, suggested like, hey, have you thought about buying a house? And I hadn't. But then within a couple of days, we linked up with a local realtor that we just found on the internet, and went and looked at several houses and kind of started scheming about how I could pull it off. And at that point, I think my parents owned maybe a handful of rental properties of their own in Georgia. And so they kind of knew about that stuff. I didn't really know much about it at all at the time. Um, like I just that year I had started reading about like what is a Roth IRA kind of thing. Like I knew very little about any of that stuff. Um, so yeah, I would say that was kind of the beginning, and then I spent the remaining portion of that semester very intensely reading about real estate just to try to get caught up, and so that I'd be ready to treat it like an investment, because I think I just always had that mentality from the beginning. Like the purpose of buying a house to me was to try to move myself ahead in the long run financially. And so I worked really hard for the next several months to kind of read up, and I listened to a bunch of Bigger Pockets podcasts and read several books and just like read about how you can run numbers and that kind of stuff. And so I ended up buying a house about 4 months later for $84,000 in Pensacola. That was a flip that someone else had done. So it was a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,200 square foot house, 10 years old, but had recently been completely redone after whatever other resident like ran it into the ground and had abused it real bad. So it was a flip that I bought, and it's gone up just like crazy in value over the last 5 years since then. 4.5 years, like almost double, approaching double what I paid for it. And I put zero down with a VA loan. Lived in it for a little bit, starting in 2017. Then one day I just decided to try Airbnb. So I did that with one room of the house for like $25 or something like that for the first night. And then after several visitors of doing that, I kind of liked getting 25, 50, $75 randomly throughout the month. And so then I started doing 2 bedrooms as one listing just so I could raise the value of it. Because I only needed one of my 3 bedrooms. I was renting out the other 2. And one thing led to another, ended up making more and more from the Airbnb, finding ways to increase the value of that service by like listing it as an entire house with 2 bedrooms, and I would just lock up my bedroom and leave for the weekend so I could rent the whole house out. And that made far more money. And then I started doing that so much that I basically wasn't living in the house anymore. And so I just rented another house on what's called a master lease for, I think it was $750 a month. And then I got 2 roommates and they each paid $300. So I was paying the remaining $150, and then we split the utilities. So for a total of, $200 something, I was living and then making way more than that every month from the Airbnb, even after the mortgage and utilities at my main house. So that was kind of like the start of it. And I sort of learned how to be an Airbnb host. I learned how to be a pseudo landlord at the second house where I was managing 2 other tenants on a master lease. And that kind of helped me save up and maximize my retirement accounts and that kind of thing, buying index funds for a couple of years. During that time, I was reading about financial independence, started reading about FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. I got really into index funds, and so I was just maxing out retirement accounts with index funds, and then a little bit of individual stocks on the side. This has gotten long-winded about how I got started, but the Airbnb kind of was really the beginning of it with that VA loan house. And then it took several more years before we kind of get to the second part of the story where I bought more rental properties.
I got you. That all sounds pretty good. And that started back in 2017. So that first house, which had as an Airbnb, now that you're no longer in that area, is that still an Airbnb, or do you still have it? Did you sell it, or are you renting it out long term, or what are you doing?
So that first house, when I left Pensacola, I just turned it into a 12-month lease rental, which it has been since then. I've had the same family tenant living in there since that was January of 2020 that they moved in. So they just renewed for a third year.
Okay, that's pretty cool then. Yeah, I'm just curious then. Do you know off the top of your head what the cash flow is on that house?
Yep. So it's rented for started out at 1095 a couple years ago, and then it went to 1118, and now it's going to 1150. So with that one, purchase price was 84.5. I put nothing down. I added somewhere in the ballpark of $5,000 in improvements. Property taxes are 150 a month, insurance 127. CapEx, maintenance, and vacancy, I set aside a total of 15% of the 1150 for that every month. Management is 120 a month, so about 10%. And then let's see, principal and interest is 362. So the total mortgage payment is like just over 600. Cash flow is right around 200 a month. That being said, that one has done really well compared to my other rentals because the actual CapEx, maintenance, and vacancy has been like nearly zero, like something like less than $100 a month of any kind of repairs or whatever that I've had in reality over the last 2 years with them. So the actual account that house sends money into and pays money out of has grown significantly over the last 2 years, which is pretty nice because it's a great house and it's gone up a lot in value as well.
Okay, yeah, it sounds pretty good because I've been to that house and actually stayed in there once. Back when I was an Airbnb. And that's a great deal because you got into it with no money down on a VA loan. And correct me if I'm wrong, you lived in that house for a while. Now you live in a different area. So even though you have a VA loan on it, if you want to buy another house in a different location, can you use that VA loan a second time?
Yes, you can. There is some strings attached, but the short answer is yes. If you move to another area, like if you're a military and you PCS to a whole new city or a whole new state or whatever, yes, you can use your VA loan again.
Okay. All right. That sounds good. All right. Well, let me ask you this then. We'll jump ahead to present day. What does your real estate portfolio look like at the moment?
My current real estate portfolio as of a couple days ago, I have that original house, and then plus 14 other rental properties that are all in Indiana. I'm working on 2 more that are currently under contract, single family homes. And also have 1 investment in a syndication for a mobile home park in Alabama. I own 10% of a 35 unit mobile home park. And that was a $35,000 investment that my wife and I made earlier in 2021. But our total real estate portfolio, it's like, off the top of my head, it's like 900 something thousand value of all of the houses combined. That's not how much equity we have. That's just the total value of the properties. And there's something like 65 to 70% leverage on those currently total.
Okay. All right. That sounds pretty good. So you did this, you got to the point you're at now in approximately 3.5 years, correct?
4.5, yeah.
4.5 years. Okay. So that's pretty good. And we know you're a helicopter pilot and you mentioned being in the Coast Guard and stuff, but you're not making like $1 million a year or nothing like that, right?
No, you can Google what I make. I'm an O3 in the military. They all make the same at that rank, with 4 years in service. So a nice thing is in the military you get what's called BAH, basic allowance for housing, and it's basically it's part of your compensation package, and they adjust it based on the cost of living where you live. So for example, in Pensacola, that portion of my paycheck was about $1,200 a month. And when I moved to Miami, nothing else changed, but that portion of my paycheck is now $2,500 a month because it costs a lot to be able to rent a place in Miami. And like you have to live there to be in a military unit in Miami. You don't have a choice. You have to live there. So they do their best to adjust your pay accordingly to kind of keep everybody equal and give them the ability to survive there. But if you're doing something like house hacking, a multifamily, or house hacking using roommates, or just renting something that's much less than you can afford and making that sacrifice to try to move yourself ahead, in my opinion, you actually have some nice opportunities in a high cost of living area as a military member. Because, for example, if you get $2,500 for your housing allowance and you rent a place that only costs half that much, even though it's not a very nice place, like you can save $1,250, and that's more than the entire amount that I was getting in Pensacola, even though I was saving most of that too. Making the same amount of sacrifice to save half of it, like half of it is a lot more in Miami.
So, all righty. That sounds pretty good. Let me ask you this then, because as you said, anyone can Google your salary in 03 in the military. And I've done the same thing because I'm a retired Navy myself, so I know what it's like. But in your opinion, anyone watching this, let's say they have no real estate at all, you don't know where they're at in the country, you don't know what kind of job they work, but do you think that the majority of folks who may tune into this channel could, if they want to, buy a rental property?
Yeah, I think so. There's some caveats that I think it's pretty doable for just about anybody to do what I did on the first one as far as getting a primary residence, because if you're military or a veteran, you can use the VA loan and put 0 down. Even if you're not, you can do as little as 5% down on conventional, I believe. FHA loan, I've heard of as low as 3.5% down payment. So like to get a primary residence, it's not really a function of how much cash do you have, because you don't need that much necessarily. It's much more a function of, can you find an investment to live in that makes sense, that will make you more money. Because I think a lot of people that buy houses or want to buy a house to live in, it's actually a poor financial move on their part. Because the biggest factor is just that people spend too much on their housing, and conventional personal finance wisdom is don't spend more than 1/3 of your income on your housing. I mean, you can, like anybody watching, like you can do whatever you want, but what I personally chose to do that has helped move me ahead in a relatively short period of time is I spent something more like 5% of what I was making on my housing. And I did so by offsetting it with Airbnb and roommates and stuff like that. And then, for some portions of that time, I was actually, coming out ahead. So I was actually making money on where I was living, using the Airbnb and everything. And then once I moved to Miami, that was the first time that my wife and I, Jessica, actually could live together, because we had been married for a few years at that point already, but living geo-bachelor, like separated because of our jobs that we were in. So once we actually moved into an apartment together, that was at the time, I think $2,300 a month. But we were both getting the $2,500 that I mentioned because we both individually were officers in the Coast Guard. And then like whatever that is as a percentage of what we were making is pretty small. It's not 1/3. It was more like, I don't know, 10% or something like that. So even though it was much more expensive, relative to what we could conventionally afford or what the Coast Guard provided as a housing allowance, we were spending like way less than that, like less than half of what they allowed. So bringing it back to your question, can anybody do it? Yeah, I think you don't really need that much cash to buy a primary residence. You don't really need all that amazing of credit. I think credit is something that is what would be a lot of people's issue. But that's something that if you learn about it and spend some time putting effort into improving it, like anybody can improve their credit too. Um, and then from there, that's a step towards being able to save more money because you lowered your monthly living expenses. So, work to be able to make more income, whether that's in your job or from a side hustle or from Airbnb or from driving Uber or something like that. Make more, save more of it. And then after a few years, you realize that it's not as hard as it once sounded to come up with, $12,000 or $15,000 for a down payment on something. And, another couple years goes by and you've done a few of those. Maybe now even coming up with something like 50 or 100,000 for some bigger investment, like that's something that is on your foreseeable future or on your radar, something that you can do if you decide to. So like Mark, I've talked to you for years doing this. I started out with basically $0 net worth. My goal in my first year was to save $10,000 of my salary, making like 40 something that first year. And I ended up doing it. I ended up saving about 3 times that. I don't even know. It's like, I don't even know how that's possible, but out of a 48,000 salary plus some side hustles, I think I invested like 30 grand in my first year out of college. So, and I'm not saying that everybody should do that or wants to do that or whatever, because I also was like a super frugal, like weirdo at times. And so I found, I've moved more towards balance over time since then. And being willing to, make sacrifices where it makes sense and being willing to spend a little bit where it makes sense, to make my life better, to make other people's lives better, and to be able to have experiences and spend time with friends and stuff. And now fast forward a few years, I don't really feel like my lifestyle is any less good than any of my friends. My personal opinion is that I'm a little bit more clever and smart with some of my financial choices, but I don't feel like I'm sacrificing. Like our cars are fine, our house is fine. We have a expensive, fancy little dog that we love. It's fine, So it's transitioned more into like building wealth, but it's pretty low key and invisible to everybody around us.
Okay. Yeah, well, that sounds pretty good then. I'm glad we talked about this. But one final question, I guess. We kind of know how you got started. We know where you're at today. But where do you see yourself going? Do you want to continue in real estate for the foreseeable future? Do you want to branch out into something else? Or if you even try to look ahead, let's just say you look ahead until you're my age. By the time you're my age, where would you like to be?
If I could have it my own way, I think I would be living in a ski lodge under the lifts at Breckenridge. And I would enjoy my coffee in the morning and then step out my door, snap into my skis and just go ride down to the lift and get on it. That's kind of what I imagine like my, dream happy place. And then of course I would have like my snowbird location somewhere else. But no, in seriousness, I think more realistically, sometime between now and the next like 15 years or so, I think I will semi-retire, be done with military service, transition to kind of like a full-time like investor / semi-retired. I probably will still fly some sort of aircraft, even if it's just recreational, or maybe for pay. But I think that's something that I want to do. And I mean, if we continue to grow our portfolio to 10 or 20 or $50 million, like that's fine too. I don't need that much, but if it's fun to just keep building, then I might do that.
All right, that sounds good. And as you will find out, or you may be finding out already, time does fly by. So you always got to enjoy today. You cherish your memories from yesterday, but you always have to plan for tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to come. And before you know it, you're going to wake up. You'll be out of the military. You'll be 50, 60 years old. And I'm speaking to our audience now. you want to wake up when you're 50 or 60 and be at that ski resort, be in that ski lodge, or be on the beach somewhere, or be at the place you want to be. You don't want to wake up and you're 60 years old and you're getting out of bed to go back to work your 9-to-5 job that you plan to work till you die. You don't want to be in that position. You want to set yourself up when you're younger, or you set yourself up at any age to start investing and just start building an investment portfolio, be it stocks, be it real estate, be it something else, and just you'll have a better financial future. All right. So anyway, I talk enough in all my videos. So Caleb, you get the last word, and then we'll wrap this up.
Thanks so much for having me on. Yeah, I would encourage anybody watching this, whether you're trying to get started or just take it to the next level. I encourage you, just believe you can do it, increase your mindset, find mentors, surround yourself with friends and mentors and people who are doing what you want to be doing and are at a place where you want to be in a few years. And then also be willing to help other people who are trying to be where you are, in a few years. Because the mentorship is just it's just a chain. We're all helping the next person behind us and being helped by the person in front of us. So good luck. You can do it, and let us know if you have any questions.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Caleb. I appreciate you being here. And odds are you'll be back on this channel again sometime in the future. We'll talk more on real estate and more on other investing topics. So once again, thank you, Caleb. Thank you, audience, for watching and listening. If you have any questions, comment. And if you have a question for Helicopter Pilot Caleb, just share, just ask in the comments, and I'm sure he'll respond to you. So y'all take care, and Mazske is signing out.